Smile in public. Personally, when I speak to you, I know you're a guy with a sense of humor and you relax and you smile. But in public, you never do. Is it the gravity of the office? Is it the stress? Or is it just the way the Lord constructed you?
No. You know, what's happening is that, you know, when you are in, I think it's just that the public sees only one face of your life. The public doesn't live with you, you know, every day. They don't go with you to the market. They don't go with you to church. They don't go with you everywhere. The bulk of the people who are with you all the time, your family, and your family here is used largely to mean, you know, your social family, your church family, or your worship family, or your community family, and so on and so forth. Many people actually get very surprised when they hear that kind of comment. You know, I rarely smile and so on. But you know, it's because those who comment that way are people who have seen me in formal circumstances.
Yes.
And they have never seen me in informal circumstances, or they have never seen me in other circumstances other than the podium.
I can see you smiling now, actually.
Yeah.
All right, another personal question, and it is that the two qualities which have defined your service at ICT, at education, and now are one, discipline, and two, a desire for order. You know, I mean, you know, when you and the professor are going around opening containers in the morning and all that, there is always that purposive, intentional, disciplined, and orderly approach, which is not very common in the way we associate public officials. Where does it come from?
There are certain choices you make in life, and some of them you make them very early in life. That is why, you know, upbringing and where you grew up and the way generally the value system within which you have been brought up ends up shaping, you know, your reality and shaping the way in which you see things. I was raised up in an environment where 2 and 2 is 4. It can't be any other thing. My late father taught us that, you know, always stand by and stick with the truth, even if you are wrong and even if you are the only one on that position. And live that way. That's a choice. And then I think as we grew up, some of us, and let me say myself, I made that choice. It has worked for me. If I would like to do something, I do it with all my heart. If I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. If I believe this is the right thing to do, I stick with it, even if I'm the only one in that position. And life, actually, in my view, people might think it's very difficult that way, but I find it exciting and easy. I mean, these are the goals you want to pursue in life. You stay on that path, and you get the work done. You know, you don't live a life where you're giving excuses every day about things, even when it's straightforward. This is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, even if I left public office today, I would regret nothing.
Waziri, when you look around, when you cast your mind's eye on our society, on the challenges we have, on the potential that we have, what do you see?
The interesting thing about our country is how incredibly blessed we are as a nation. The resources in our midst and the wonderful people that God has created and put in this country. The pain you feel in most cases actually is that, truth be told, in some cases, we the leaders are the ones who let the people down. Sometimes you keep asking yourself the question, are we actually going to wake up one morning and outsource this country to some consultants who can run it, especially if they run it well without you know, wasting resources and so on, because we will all live like kings and we'll be happy, and we'll be fine. I mean, because there's enough to keep us all happy, there's enough to you know, to feed the children that God has given us, there's enough to do the things that we need to do to survive. But it's, if you ask me, when I cast my mind aside to look at the reality, that is what bothers me as a leader. In more ways than one, you see cases where, you know, people have actually been given responsibilities and decided to do different things with it. Well, you know, you can religiously say, you know, it's human and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is this. That's where it is. I see people, and I can't really say this even in government. I see people the president has trusted and you know, given them responsibilities, trusted them and told them, hey, you do this thing. And then, they basically just do the exact opposite of what the president has asked them to do. And then you keep asking yourself the question, why? Why do we live like that?
When people depart from the instructions that they've been given, in your experience, is there always accountability?
To be honest with you, Mutuma, let's face it. I mean, the public service in the country is a humongous machine with hundreds and thousands of people who do their jobs. Your leader, your manager cannot be everywhere all the time. We can have as many rules as we want. We can write 10 constitutions if we want. You made the point yourself before. You can write 20 constitutions if you want. You can write as many rules as you want. Yes, we need the rules. I'm not saying we don't need them. I'm not saying we don't need the constitution. We do. But, that in itself is not going to give you what you desire, because you are not God. You are not going to be everywhere. It's dependent upon sometimes the difference that is made in the success of one society and not the other. That difference is made by the collective consciousness of the society. People decide, I am a part of the whole. I am not the whole. So if I am a part of the whole, let me play my role. B plays their role, C plays their role, and then collectively we will have a great whole. And where people come to that collective consciousness, they do better than cases where people think, I can play games and move around. Accountability, these things are usually easier said than done. How many cases, how many people are you going to take to court? How many people are you going to fire, sack and appraise? Your time is not supposed to be spent on that. You don't have a lesser responsibility than the president has for the country. He is our president, yes, but the truth of the matter is that as citizens of the country, we have a responsibility also to do our bit.
As a scholar and as a public servant, what is your understanding of democracy?
In my view, it's very simple. It's to be conscious and to practice the consciousness about the others. Because you see, you then wake up in the morning knowing, I have an idea, but that's not the only idea. Mutuma also has an idea. If I'm going to make a decision that affects all of us, let me find out what Mutuma thinks. That's where it begins. To be conscious of the other, and then to practice that knowledge of the other, the other people around. If I'm going to share resources, the people who may have an emotional relationship with me, or the people who are related with me, are not the only ones. There are others, as it were. I may have an idea, I may have an opinion, I may be a smart person, but I'm not the only one. The other smart people around, they also have ideas. So that because everything else springs from there. But the other doesn't matter.
But the fundamental issue is the recognition that the power remains with the people.
That is it.
And that government exercises that delegated power.
The power does not reside with me. Because you see, when you talk about the power resides with the people, it means you have recognized the other.
Yes.
The power is not with me.
Yes.
I'm not the beginning, I'm not the alpha and omega. It's the others around.
Yes.
So I must then derive power from the collective whole. If I'm going to act on behalf of the whole, let me not usurp their views and their powers and act as though I'm actually representing them, as it were. So that collectivity then begins to make sense. That is why then power is derived from the people. Whichever way you look at it, it begins and ends with that consciousness, the practice and recognition of the other.
With the social contract being that we are giving it to you so that you can act in our interest and on our behalf. Now, which leads to my next question, is that when you look at our democracy today, would you say that the social contract is healthy, that the government and all those who are in government exist to serve the people at all time?
By and large in Kenya, yes, those in leadership exist to serve the interest of the masses. Sometimes the problem is the value system is not shared across the board. We don't pick leaders from one pool or one unadulterated pool. Our leaders are not socialized in one environment, and then our social and moral fabric is not entrenched. So over a period of time, you may find a set of leaders who are really focused on supporting and working with the people and acting in the best interest of the people. But inherent in that, because we have not espoused a very deep and strong value system, you will also still find people who basically, to be even more blunt, betray that social contract, as it were.
So what happens when the social contract is violated and doesn't exist? And therefore you have a system where the people who are in authority exist to serve their own interests and not the interests of the people. Does that create revolutionary conditions?
Well, it depends. It depends. It depends on whether, if you look at a case where those in power maybe are just individuals, not a system. There are areas or the environments where the betrayal or the negation of the social contracts is a systemic decision. It's rampant. I mean, it's a decision that people have made, that this is how we are going to live. We don't care what those ones think. Then it pits the people versus those who are in power. But in cases where you can see, by and large, 70-80% or maybe 60-65%, there's deliberate effort to pay attention to those on whose behalf power is being exercised. The 30 or the 35% vulgarization of the contract calls for reform, not revolution.
But you don't think with the rampant corruption that we see and with the certain levels of impunity that are in our society, that we are getting there, we are getting to a place where this criminality is becoming systemic?
We have challenges. I'll be the last one to lie here and pretend that we don't have challenges. We do have challenges. I mean, there are cases where you feel sometimes, or you also get very frustrated about certain things. But I don't think the situation is as bleak as you are portraying it. I mean, honestly, this is not a society or an environment where nothing happens. I can drive you around this country and you'll be amazed at the things that are happening. In the span of 8 years, this administration has doubled electricity connectivity in the country. I mean, you cannot say that nothing is happening. It's all struggling.
Nothing is happening. But where there is a serious and endemic corruption.
I will not deny that there's corruption in the country. There is corruption in the country, and I'll be the last person to try to. I mean, why lie? There are certain things which you feel. I mean, I'm now chairing the cabinet committee on projects, and I can see clearly cases where there are projects we are revising right now ourselves as a cabinet committee, because clearly you can see that the way they were started and so on, the intention was to loot public resources and stuff like that, and we are revising them. So those are evidences and clear cases of corruption. So you can't deny that it does not exist. It exists, but it's not. I don't think it's as you are describing it. It's not endemic. This is not a basket society. I mean, honestly speaking, this is a great country.
As a government, where do you see this country in 50 years?
Unless we make fundamental mistakes. I have to underline that fundamental mistakes in our political practice and in the choices we make in upcoming electoral processes, unless we make fundamental mistakes, if we stayed on this trajectory, in 50 years we will have passed, we will be a very strong middle-income country, almost becoming developed. Because if we stayed on this trajectory and exploited all the resources available in this country, implemented the policy frameworks that have been set by President Kenyatta in this administration, and stayed on this path of reform and economic development, in 50 years, we will be the Singapore of Africa.
Do you think we have made, we are prepared to take care of intervening circumstances such as climate shock, such as the destabilizing geopolitics of the region?
We have sufficient preparedness. And, preparedness is not a one-off affair. It's not an event. It's an institutional issue. It's a progression. You move from one end to another. So you talk about levels of preparedness. You move from one level to another level as you go along. That's why I'm talking about staying on this trajectory. Living in the geopolitical environment we live right now, with the kind of challenges we deal with every day, I mean, we should thank God we've done very well, and we continue to do very well. As I said, as long as we do not depart from this path where we are right now, challenges or no challenges, we are headed for greatness as a country.
Now let's talk for a few minutes about COVID. Where are we?
At the moment, the rate of infection is rising, but I thank God that at 1.7% fatality rate is not that high. It's one of the lowest around the world, but you see, let's not delude ourselves. My colleague, the Minister for Health, has warned us even today that, unless we are going to be serious about the containment measures and unless we are going to be focused on what we are doing, we could slide, as it was. So it's a very delicate position we find ourselves in, and my view is that, everyone should do double what we, have been doing.
Is there any possibility of another lockdown?
Not that I know, because you see, these decisions are made on the basis of the way the president has decided to manage the COVID situation in the country. Is that the president has, made the wise decision, I believe, of being informed by science, by information. We do analysis, we listen to the experts, and then we take a decision based on that. So as we go along, we'll keep reviewing these things week by week. And then our decision will be made depending on how our situation looks as we go along.
Okay, but testing is a critical part of managing the.
Yes, it is.
What we are doing now is targeted testing. Is there likelihood of mass testing? Because once people know that they're infected, then they can be able to take care of others.
You see, by the way, there's no country around the world that has done mass testing. Mutuma, it's a damn expensive affair. We also have to use the resources in a sensible manner as we are advised as it were. Yes, we can test 47 or 50 million Kenyans, but the question is, resources aside, infrastructure resources aside, and budget issues aside, and so on and so forth, our experts are asking us, is that the sensible way of managing the spread of the disease? The sensible way is what we are doing, or what is now being seen as targeted testing, which we are doing at the moment. That is what
where you have testing on demand, that anyone who needs a test has access to it.
Both that and also where contact tracing is done, like in Nairobi, the hotspots and so on, where experts, after analysis and scanning the environment, feel we should test segments of the population in particular areas, such as they are doing. We are just fine in doing what we are doing. And actually, even if I say so myself, I honestly think that the way in which the government has managed COVID is fairly responsible.
When I look around the region, different countries have different approaches to this.
I don't know, Mutuma. The best way I would like to deal with this as a public official is this: let everyone mind their country, mind your house.
I'm just proceeding from a comment that was made by President Kagame in an interview with the East African, that the situation would have been much better if we look at it from a regional perspective.
The truth of the matter is, President Kagame is right. The situation would have been different if we managed it from a regional point of view. Now we don't have that opportunity, and we don't have that. That is not available to us. So, are we going to stop doing what we have to do in our country? Let's do what we have to do in our country. That is the ideal. We would have been happier if it happened in that kind of manner. But it didn't. Let us focus on what we can do. Even when we face those challenges on our borders and so on, that's fine. Let's do the best we can do.
Is the government satisfied about the efficiency with which the resources that have been provided for the fight against COVID have been applied?
I have no evidence of dissatisfaction from the quarters and agencies that are dealing with this matter. Quite frankly, we have resources that were given to us that are in our budget. We have applied the resources that came from development partners. They are being applied. And by the way, we began this one COVID in March this year. We have been on it for 5 months as we go along. The resources that have come from development partners, from the private sector, and so on and so forth. Really, why is it that we cannot fight the disease and get done with it and look at the books later on? There's a practice we have in this country where sometimes we mix things too much. The war against COVID is going on. Some debate continues there on resources and other things on that side. Honestly,
Okay. You think the police did a good job in enforcing the lockdowns and then participating
in the
fight?
circumstances, by the way, the police did an excellent job, regardless of what I've seen the detractors or critics of the police raising so many issues, including human rights organizations with whom I have met, by the way. And we've had long discussions about them. There are certain things that happened that I don't condone, that I will not support. But I have to be very honest about this matter. But sometimes when people look at these things, they exaggerate them. I mean, IPOA has got about 70 complaints, just about 70 cases or complaints that were filed with IPOA. Our internal affairs unit has got less than 100 cases that were filed with them. And IPOA is investigating some of these 70 cases that were filed with them in relation to COVID. The operation has been going on for the last 5 months. That is roughly about 11 or 12 cases or so per month. Really, what are we talking about? Second, the police officers are not angels from heaven. They're human beings who live in our midst. They will make mistakes. That's why we have service standing orders. To be sure that, when an individual police officer acts outside of their powers and outside of the law, they are brought to account and they are called to responsibility. What I find unacceptable, and I have to be very frank about this, I take responsibility. I am the country's Minister for Interior and Coordination of National Government. It is not fair, it's not accurate, some of the things that are said about the police officers.
Let's talk about your function, your role, coordinating the implementation of government programs. I think that was Executive Order number 1 of 2019. What has been the experience?
Wonderful. The last 1.5 years, sitting and chairing the committee of my colleagues in cabinet has been nothing but an amazing experience. Quite frankly, at a personal level, I have almost rediscovered the country. It's been a big lesson in problem solving, in ensuring that interministerial collaboration actually means everything. I can today, if I were to write a book on public service, I would just say nothing beats interdepartmental collaboration and interministerial collaboration. Problems that were looking so difficult yesterday are solved very easily when people sit around the table and the people express their fears, their concerns, their sectional or departmental interest, and then consensus is built very easily for the good of the country. It makes a big, big difference.
Does that coordination facilitate more efficient application of resources?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Tremendously, I can tell you. I mean, look, there are about 4 things that affect public sector projects in the country. Number 1 is resources. Sometimes fewer resources are available for projects than we think. When we start projects, sometimes we start projects with the hope that we have sufficient resources to complete them. Then midway we discover that we have certain financial challenges. To navigate those challenges and maybe lengthen the time of the project or reduce the size of the project and so on, so that you can complete it, is something that we now are able to discuss and figure out. The second challenge is conflict, broadly defined. Conflict could be regulatory conflict. There are projects where NEMA has not given an approval, or Kenya Forestry Service is not happy with the decision that was taken, or KWS is not interested and feels left out, or the security sector is not consulted and so on. So you can write letters to each other for years on end while the project is stalled and nothing is happening. So conflict of various kinds. Some of it is actually legal. We have so much money held in projects because of court cases and stuff like that. So mediating these conflicts and sitting down to figure out what needs to be done, is critical.
But in exercising that responsibility, does it create a perception that this is probably the job that should have gone to the deputy president? What is your relationship with the deputy president?
I don't know. I don't know about their perceptions. And the deputy president is the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya.
Okay, so there's no conflict. There's no conflict of roles. There's
Deputy president is the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. What is my relationship with Governor Anyang' Nyong'o? He's the governor of Kisumu County. What is the relationship with Wycliffe Oparanya between me and him? He's the governor of Kakamega County.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, let's talk about security, Waziri. Maybe it's an easier topic. Terror attacks have gone down significantly since Dusit, I think. We haven't had a serious one away from the border areas. What is the reason? Did we get better at fighting Al-Shabaab?
The president formed a multi-agents team. We are now having all security sector institutions working together seamlessly and sharing information seamlessly. We have built a capability that could only have been a dream in 2013, as it were. Why? Because the commander-in-chief has risen up to the challenge of playing his role effectively, ensuring that securing the people of Kenya is his foremost responsibility, and he has done a spectacular job of it.
Complaints about the disappearance of youth, especially at the coast and some parts of northeastern, with then some NGOs saying that it's the government which is disappearing suspects. Is there substance to?
When people raise issues like those, I would like them to give me evidence. Forgive my language. Let me just speak very bluntly about this. The level of idiocy with which people discuss these issues sometimes is very annoying. Now, when people tell you, if someone comes and says, Fred has disappeared today, it is the police who are responsible. Then they don't tell you the nexus between Fred and the police. What's that? You see, some of this is stereotypical. It's a carryover from some mentality. I don't know where it came from. Some people another day collected some what they purported to be human bones from some forest and said, oh, these are people who may have been killed here, and it's the police who killed them. So how do you conclude? How do you get there? Let me ask you, in a sensible manner, how do you get there?
Is there any possibility that gambling in some form will make a comeback?
Not that I know of, and then I guess by the way, even as I speak to you today, during this financial year, those betting lenses have to be renewed every financial year. We have not renewed any betting lenses this year because the Betting Licensing and Control Board has not agreed with the Ministry of Health on the protocols that betting companies will have to follow in operating their betting businesses. So I am not aware of any betting company that is in business to start with. Secondly, our resolve to deal with what I call the gambling menace is decisive. And I don't know how I can say it. We are not going back on this, Mutuma. This thing has hurt this country and almost destroyed our youth. I'm not going to say that we will close out that aspect of our life forever. But if ever it has to happen, it has to happen in a regulated environment which respects the interests and especially development interests of this country.
Now, there was a crackdown on drugs in the coast sometimes back. I forget when it was. I think, was it the last year or the year before?
Well, last year, we started the campaign last year.
Yeah.
If you look at the drug situation in the coastal part of our country before we began the crackdown and today, even if you look at the reports we get on the movement of drugs and so on, ask anybody, even fair organizations including Interpol, people will tell you that there has not only been a drastic reduction, a good number of those thugs have moved out of our territory because of the pressures that we put. Overt and covert. Overt pressures like, arresting people and so on. I have a list of institutions that I am about to announce that under the law, especially under the anti-terrorism law and under the money laundering regime, I'm supposed to gazette or blacklist. I will do so in about a week or 2 weeks' time. A number of businesses, as a result of investigations that we conducted in Mombasa and the work that has been going on. We have, quite frankly, even if I say so myself, we made incredible progress in that area. And if we stay on this path, I have no reason to believe we can't. We will do much better. The laxity that existed before is not there. Fortunately, now we have the Coast Guard, which we are building, which is helping us. We are working with the Ministry of Transport to even register the private jetties, which were used in the past as routes for moving in drugs and stuff like that. Our surveillance system has got much better, incredibly better than it ever was before. Where we have weaknesses or challenges, like in the judiciary, we are having discussions quietly, and I don't want to comment about that at this stage. We're having discussions, and I believe that the JSC has shown responsibility, that it's something they will deal with.
The Americans had hinted after the Akashas that they were interested in more of our officials. Has there ever been any movement in that?
I can't comment on ongoing security decisions and work. It's not right. I cannot make sideline comments on that. That's an ongoing work. Actions are going on right now, so I can't comment about that.
Okay. Kuduma number.
Yes.
When is it coming? When is the conclusion of that project?
The registration was the first step. Then the synchronization of the data sets. Then we give you that one number. When we make sure that every person has got a file that is complete, that your NRB records are complete, your NHIF records are there, your PIN records are there, and everything, then we give you the number. And then that exercise is what is going on, and we are at the tail end of it, and at the end of it, everybody will get an Uduma number. That will give you an Uduma card. With the Uduma card, you don't need an ID card, by the way.
Very many people have lost jobs. Very many businesses are in trouble. What is the sense in government?
Even with the challenges that we have faced recently, certain aspects of our economy are actually rebounding and coming back. The last time I spoke to my colleagues, in the Ministry of Agriculture, especially on the horticultural sector, our export of flowers and vegetables and so on, they were saying the numbers are actually coming back almost to near where we were before COVID. As it were, and that means, of course, that those who are employed in those sectors will get their jobs. In the manufacturing sector, some of our manufacturers have been hard hit. First by when the airspace was closed, factories closed, and everybody closed everywhere on earth. Movement even of raw materials was a problem, and so on. So there was a slowdown, as it were. We were dependent on AGOA. We could not move some of our clothes to the US and stuff like that. But that too is coming back, and the resilience that we have seen in the manufacturing sector. Some of our people turning to making PPEs locally. As a way of survival. And there are some manufacturers in this country who have done this country great. I mean, there are people who retained their employees even at 50% of their salaries, just because they did not want to put people out of employment. They decided they will share the losses, as it were. Everyone has taken a hit. Mutuma, I am on a pay cut. Even me as a cabinet minister, I'm on a pay cut. The president is on a pay cut. It's a crisis we face that we are dealing with, but we do not think that we are going to collapse and completely melt in these circumstances. If, for example, manufacturers remain resilient, adapt to the environment in which we find ourselves, we will rise again.
What does your heart desire? What do you think is in the future?
I don't know. The future, we leave it to God.
Okay, but what is your plan? Because at the conclusion,
my plan is to do what I do and do it well. That's all. I tell people all the time, Mutuma, what makes the difference between people who succeed in the things they do and those who don't, including students in school is the level of focus. Focus, focusing on. We tell our kids when you go to school, please go sit on a desk, listen to the teacher, study hard, and pass your exam. That's what we tell them. And we also the same thing to public officials. When you have been given a task to do, focus on that task. See, sit there. You have been told to sit there. Focus on that task and ensure that it's done. At the moment, and I said this even when I was at the Ministry of Education, when people were asking me, what do I want to do? I said, I am the President's Program Officer. The President, this is a presidential constitution, it's a presidential government. The President went to the people of Kenya, entered into a contract with them, they elected him. Then he came and put people together to help him achieve his objective and fulfill his promises with the people of Kenya. And we are program officers, so the President hired us as program officers. I am the President's foremost program officer now, implementing the President's program.